Welcome back. Gun violence marred Juneteenth and Father's Day celebrations in various parts of the country. There were at least 7 mass shootings over the weekend and 67 fatal shootings in a 24-hour period. That's according to the Gun Violence Archive experts, and they say this spike in violence is a perfect storm that includes an increase in gun sales and an explosion in gang activity as the nation emerges from a pandemic into what could be a very long, hot summer. Once again, we are joined now with Georgia State Senator David Lucas. He joins us, and we are also back with Troy Prestwood. It's a pleasure to have both of you. Troy is a political commentator from Washington, D.C. And gentlemen, we'll get right to it. This is a very difficult time right now in our country. We are facing gun control problems, and Republicans, as you know, are pushing back against what voters have decided in the last election on the state level and on the national level. So let's talk about whether Democrats and the Biden administration are being too accommodating, starting with gun legislation. Senator, I'll begin with you. What do you think should be done?
Well, you know, we in Georgia passed a bill that basically said that you could not stop anybody and ask them if they were carrying a gun. If you were a police officer and you knew you arrested somebody and they had a felony and you saw something budging out their pocket that looked like a gun, in the state of Georgia, you cannot even go up and ask him whether he has a gun or not unless he commits a crime. Then you can step in. And that's what Republicans passed in the Georgia General Assembly. I call it Wild Bill Hitchcock and Jesse James running the streets of Georgia.
You know, Troy, the senator makes a very good point. Wild Bill Hickok and Jesse James running through the streets is the wild, wild west, and yet we're seeing it play front and center in reality television in our communities across the country, and most of them happen to be communities of color. What do you say about the legislation? What is it going to take to get people to do the right thing with some common sense gun laws, particularly, Troy, the legislation that we see going on in Texas, that anyone now can buy a gun?
Yeah. You know, I used to spend my summers in Texas, Houston in particular, and I can tell you that's where I learned how to fire a gun as well, because Texas has a really big gun culture there, and I'm not surprised where we're at today. It is a sad commentary, though, that anyone can buy a gun. There's no background checks. There's no checks or balances at all for people who want to purchase a weapon. I do find that to be quite scary. Let me just say this, though. In Black and brown communities across the country, and especially here in cities like Washington, D.C., we do have an epidemic of gun violence. And today, at least, we know that in the past, the opposition has blocked the CDC, which people forget. There's a P at the end, which is prevention. They blocked them from even studying what's happening with gun violence in our country. Now, with Biden in the White House, we are at least looking at this as a disease and trying to come to the root cause of what's causing it so that we can do the hard work to try to solve this problem. But I am all for common sense gun legislation. I think it has broad bipartisan support across the country, no matter if you talk to Democrats or Republicans, even if you're in the NRA. Those members also feel that we should have common sense gun legislation. What we need are some courageous senators. That's what we're missing. People who are willing, senators who are willing to do the right thing and bring this legislation to the floor so that we can once again protect our children, protect communities, protect mothers. I mean, come on, this is way it's gone beyond far too, it's far too far in terms of what we need to do around this issue. It's going on far too long. I mean, we have to do something now.
Yeah, Troy, obviously many of us agree with you because there's just too much bloodshed in our country, causing too much heartbreak and pain, and it's getting beyond inner city blues because it's happening in too many rural areas as well. But Senator Lucas, I want to go to you now and talk about voting rights. You know, Georgia looms large in the fight for voting rights across the country. It also represents the sweeping changes that we find going on with Republican legislatures, such as in your state, where they've been blocking a lot in terms of voting rights for Black Americans with these new laws that they've instituted. And on the federal side, we have Stacey Abrams now agreeing to Senator Joe Manchin, who says, look, let's have an election day so that we can push forward the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Act. Do you agree with Stacey Abrams? Is she right to find compromise and get this pushed forward?
I think we all have to look at compromise. Politics is the art of compromise. But there's been no compromise on the Republican side. In Georgia, the election did not go the way that they wanted it to go. And people of color turned out. And we didn't do it by ourselves. Whites voted against Donald Trump. The lieutenant governor even made a speech and said that the reason they passed the bills that they passed in the Georgia General Assembly is because they believed in the Trump lie. And had Raffensperger had not recorded the conversation with Donald Trump, Trump would have lied on him too. The problem is this. You're talking about power, and power concedes nothing. People got out and voted. We got out and voted in numbers. We registered new voters. Stacey Abrams was part of that get out the vote and registering people of color to vote. And we changed the tide in Georgia. We sent 2 Democratic senators. One, a black for the first time from the state of Georgia in the United States Senate, and a Jewish senator. And they are mad because they did not get the results that they wanted to get. We did not tell them not to go to the polls and vote. Donald Trump told a lot of folks in Georgia, don't go to the polls and vote. You can't trust them. And the big lie has spread, and that's what it's been all about. What they see is people getting together and voting in their interests. And that's what's happening. And they're trying to block that and make sure that they can control the state legislatures as well as the United States Congress and do the damage that they are doing. I think the filibuster needs to be busted up. I really do. I mean, what Donald Trump did is exactly what Rutherford B. Hayes did in the election with Samuel James Tilden back in the 1800s. And what Hayes did, he had a meeting with the southern states in a black hotel in Washington, D.C. I keep forgetting the guy's name. That I think it was Romney or something like that. He owned the hotel, and they had the secret meeting. That's how Hayes beat Tilden, because Tilden was leading him in the South.
He's dropping some history right there.
I appreciate that. Some history right there, Troy. And when we dig down deep into the history, you know, you go back to Frederick Douglass and how so many presidents actually would travel across to Southeast Washington, to Anacostia, to actually talk to him. But they did the job. They did the work they were supposed to do. They would go talk to one of the leading black men of his time. And now we find that Republicans are no longer talking to us. They're doing what they've done historically through Reconstruction and Jim Crow. They're sidestepping us and not dealing with us face to face and earning our vote. What would be your message, Troy, to the Republicans there on Capitol Hill? We see that Mitch McConnell is drilling down and doubling down and saying debunk racism. Talk to me about it. What are you getting from Mitch McConnell and the Republicans?
You know, you just so happen to mention Anacostia, and I live in Anacostia, and right around the corner from the Frederick Douglass House. And so it has very big significance and meaning to me and to us who live here. Let me just say this. Our politics is broken. All the politics in this town just broken, especially on Capitol Hill. I'm old enough to remember a time when it was Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, you know, and they all, you know, they fought like hell, but they at least worked to get something done for the American people. Now everyone is in their corners
because they cared about the American people.
Come out and play.
They cared about the American people.
Well, sure, and in some ways they did. Other ways, you know, we can argue that. But I think what we do see right now is that everyone is in their respective corners and they won't come out and play in the sandbox. It's very childish.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping we can do is get some courageous members of Congress in the Senate or in the House. I know there's a bipartisan group that's working in the Senate that can help, push meaningful legislation forward, especially the George Floyd Policing Act, the For the People
Absolutely.
Act, the Voting Rights Act, the DC Statehood Bill. We need to meet in the middle. And I know that the state senator said that politics is the art of compromise, and that's very true. But if you're not even talking to one another, then where's the compromise? So we have to work harder and smarter to bring people to the table. And if we can't bring you to the table, I think it's time to think about brute force.
All right.
The state senator said it earlier. It may be time to reform that
Troy.
filibuster.
Well,
Look, I've got to go. Gentlemen, this has been a very good conversation. Senator, I hear you. You got to come back. You both of you have to come back so we can finish this dialogue. I appreciate you both so much. Senator David Lucas as well as Troy Donte Prestwood. Thank you, gentlemen, for an inspiring conversation and informative. Appreciate you both and your perspective on politics.
Thank you for having us.
All right, in less than 3 weeks, thousands of dollars in tax credits will be available to parents, and we'll tell you who may qualify for this financial relief next on The World Tonight.
Closed captioning brought to you by Nutrisystem. Lose weight and get healthy with meals delivered to your door.
Tell me how much weight you lost with Nutrisystem.
I've lost 41 pounds.
40.
45.
Act now and get 50% off a month of meals and shakes.
Having a violent start to the summer season.
Untold stories.
Her goal is to stop the surge of migrants.
National stories exposed.
Hospitalizations of adolescents with COVID-19.
Coast to coast.
But it's necessary and it's got to be done.
BNC correspondents bring you the truth.
In Philadelphia,
In Los Angeles.
in New Orleans.
We are BNC.
When they hear that word change, they panic.